morning. Welcome back to our podcast Conversations. This is Father Mark Toops over at Christ the Redeemer Catholic Church in Thibodaux. And as I welcome you back to some podcasts today, certainly we have to acknowledge that we've had a little interruption in our conversations because of everything Tropical Storm and Hurricane Barry. And I think it would be certainly not of the Lord for us just to jump back into conversation without first acknowledging where we've been over the last several days. As we're having a conversation about prayer, certainly prayers go out to anyone who has been affected or perhaps even still will be affected by the consequences of the weather that we had along the Gulf Coast and certainly in South and the rest of Louisiana over the past couple days and through the weekend. If you or your family were affected by the storm, then certainly we continue to pray for you here at Christ the Redeemer with masses offered for you, intercession certainly around the clock, and praying for God's blessings upon all of you. But I'm also equally grateful today to all those who I think we just take for granted in times like that. We were glued to the TV watching what I thought was exceptional media coverage of the storm, kind of keeping us informed of everything. And all those folks work around the clock during these times. And our first responders doing a great job keeping things safe for us and keeping us in the loop, and those in Lower Terrebonne Parish who experienced some flooding and all those who responded to that on behalf of us. There's a lot of people that make our lives easier and safe, especially in extraordinary times like the ones that we just had, and I just want to, with you together, celebrate that. So to them, our prayers continue, and I am grateful for what God did in sparing us as well as in protecting us through people as well as through His providence. Lots of prayers around the clock this weekend, and we are in a conversation about prayer. We're resuming our conversation about prayer. And this morning, as well as for the rest of the week, what I want to do is I want to unpack what I think are the most important parts of prayer. We are going to get into some how to pray over the next couple of weeks. But if we just jump right into technique without this week, I think we're going to not serve you well, and I think a lot of us are going to struggle. This week I want to talk about some of the things that we need to do before we pray. And one of the things that we need to do before we pray is just ask ourselves, when are we going to pray? It's important for us to have a conversation about the when, because the when always affects the what and the how, you might say. I'm a morning person. I rise usually every morning around 4 a.m. It's just the way that I'm wired. I try to sleep in, and that'll take me all the way to 5. But so the morning is the best time for me to pray. I'm uninterrupted there. I'm alert. I'm awake. I'm at my best. I also carry with me a brain that is moving fast, and so the morning also brings with it distractions. There are pluses and minuses, you might say advantages and disadvantages to any of us at the sweet spot for our prayer time. For some of us, you might be a night person. Maybe you're up late, and maybe that's the best time for you to pray. Late at night, where you can look back on the day and you feel alert and alive. First thing you want to do as you ask yourself about when you're going to pray is ask yourself, when are you at your best? We all are at our best at different times, and we just want to embrace the natural rhythm of our bodies and of life. Second question that I think impacts when we are going to pray is, when are you most consistent? So you might be most consistent, let's say at lunch, because that's when your schedule allows you to pray. But if you are often interrupted at lunch, or if this particular week you have a lot of lunch engagements, then that's not going to work for you. You might say, hey, I want to pray early in the morning, but that's also the time when the kids are getting ready for school, or that's when the house is busy and you find yourself interrupted a lot. Well, that's probably not the best time for you to pray. So you want to balance when you're at your best versus when you might say your schedule is at its best. Second question you want to ask yourself is, when are you most uninterrupted? The third thing that we want to ask ourselves is, when are you most consistent? I find when I was working professionally, I was not at my best, you might say, at lunch, but that was the most consistent. My lunch hour was often uninterrupted. I could pray almost every day at lunch. I would just eat a little faster, you might say, and carve out a little extra time for prayer right there. And that was the best time for me to pray, because that's when I was most consistent. When are you at your best? When are you most uninterrupted? And when are you most consistent? The time that we pray needs to be all three of those in some kind of combination. Now, in addition to that, it's also important for us to know that when you pray might look different either day to day, or it certainly might look different weekdays versus weekends. In other words, for a lot of us, our rhythm Monday through Friday looks a very certain and particular way, but maybe the rhythm on the weekends looks a little bit different. We need to take all of that into consideration also. This week, we're talking about before we pray, and we want to take seriously when we pray. Your homework today is to ask yourself those three questions. When are you at your best? When are you most uninterrupted? And when are you most consistent? Come on back tomorrow. We're going to talk about where we're going to pray, which also has a big influence on us. And until our conversation unfolds tomorrow, God bless you.